Hello, everybody, and welcome to the AdCast, a podcast for the study of modern visual culture. I'm your up-and-coming reporter, Soup.
And I'm your scraggly desert priest, Renu.
This episode, AT stands for Absolute Territory because we'll be talking about the Winter 2023 season. But before we get into that, what have you been up to?
Ooh. I just got back from about like a 2-week trip. I had 2 conventions in a row back to back, and I traveled from one to the other. Yeah, so the first one was Kawaii-con in Honolulu. It was my first time in Hawaii. It was so fun. I would love to go there many more times. It was so good. Weather was great, of course. The island is beautiful. We did after the convention, we went on like this hike up to a waterfall. It was so pretty. Unfortunately, the weather at that point was still a little bit chilly, so it was a little bit cold to jump in the water. It'd be nice to go when it's just like maybe like a month, like maybe like a early May and onward. I think probably would be a nicer time to go. But regardless, I went in the water anyway, and I still had fun. And the convention itself was really nice. The people there are, of course, like really chill, friendly people. Like we had more than any other convention that I've been to, people that like just strangers, like locals there, who would like come up and like help me with stuff, or like if I was carrying a bag or something, or they would just like joke around with us. Like it was just so fun, you know. It was just like the whole vibe was correct. It was good.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was great. On the other hand, Seattle was the next place that I traveled to for SakuraCon. SakuraCon, the convention itself, I love. The people there, I love. I just do not enjoy the act of traveling to and from Seattle, because every time I do, there's some kind of delay or a cancellation or both, and it's a miserable time. I don't know why. Every time I've gone to SakuraCon, it's been this way.
Just cursed.
It's been a nightmare to get into the city. It's been a nightmare to leave the city. I don't know why, but yeah. But yeah, aside from that, the convention, of course, went well. I went, I saw a lot of, there were some people that I met who came from like my streams and stuff too, so that was really cool too.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was really nice. It was a good time, regardless of the traveling situation. So yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. Aside from that, I've been I did some convention decompression. You know, it was a long time away, and so I like buried myself in dog and cats for several days, and now I've emerged and I'm starting to prepare for my next round of conventions. May is going to be crazy, and yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you?
I have not been up to anything too terribly exciting. I know that's like that's not too much of a shocker to hear, I'm sure. I also went on a little trip recently. I actually just got back.
Yeah.
That was nice. We had to find somebody to watch the cats while we were away because, you know, the whole house was going. But we did. You know, one of our friends watched the cats, and you know, they're still here. They're still healthy. So yeah. I mean, everything turned out okay. The trip was nice. I have basically just been like asleep since I got back. Like, there's just something about, you know, something about being at home where like you have to you just decompress, and it's like, even if what you were doing was relaxing somewhere else, like you get home and you're just like so tired.
Yeah.
You know? It's not like it juices your batteries all the way up. It's like, oh, I'm finally home. I can finally like sleep for 2 days.
Yeah, you get to sleep in your own bed, surrounded by your animals and familiar things, and it's nice. Like I'm also the same way. I'm like, man, the 2 weeks on the road, even though I've been on 2-week trips before, every time I come home, I'm just so relieved to be home.
I I think I just like I have like particularly poor adjustment to coming back from trips. Like every my because like all of my sort of like routines have been upset, so I'm just like, where am I?
How did I live my life?
Right. It always takes a couple of days to kind of get back into the groove of my normal day to day. But yeah, that's the only really exciting thing that I can think of off the top of my head since the last time we recorded, which was a little bit ago.
Just a little bit. Enough that stuff happened in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a little scary to me that it's like already in the middle of April. Like
why? Why does that scare you?
It feels like January was yesterday.
It has been flying, right?
Like this year, I feel like has been moving so fast.
Right? I feel like that too.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, we'll keep trucking along. I think probably part of it is just the fact that like the podcast has sort of turned into an episode will come out when it comes out. Which I mean, we're doing our best, but like we have to coordinate our schedules, and you know, you're not even home a lot of the time, so sometimes, you know, and sometimes like, you know, we have topics that we want to cover that like, you know, I'm not sure like, you know, when we will do this or that, but the next episode is still going to be Chainsaw Man. It's still going to come out at some point this year.
It will be soon. It
will be soon.
We're prepared for it. We just need to record it.
I make it sound like it'll happen in like August. Like this will be like soon.
I mean, that's what happened with Monster.
That one got pushed back quite a bit. Like we've really been coasting on the seasonal stuff. Just because like honestly, seasonal stuff is like kind of exhausting to keep up with. Like it's a pretty significant time investment in a lot of ways.
It is. I enjoy it because we end up watching a bunch of stuff that I probably wouldn't have picked up otherwise. But yeah, it is an investment for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I love to talk about all of the stuff, and in many ways, it kind of sometimes saves us from having to do a whole episode about like, you know, this or that, like barring special circumstances, you know, like Chainsaw Man, where I just like really want to take it aside and talk about it a lot. It's nice, but also like because of how weird anime broadcasting is and how like there's always a couple of early shows and a couple of late shows, it is always so difficult to keep like exactly on track with the seasons, with the samplers and the wrap-ups. Like really it's like, well, we wanted to record the sampler, but like there's still like 2 or 3 shows that haven't aired yet, so we have to wait another week to do that. Right. Yeah. And by the time like we have sat down and recorded, it's like halfway through the season, and then like because like, you know, we do the wrap up, and like by the time we do the wrap up, we're like 3 episodes into the season, and then we have to record this. So anyway, it's a vicious cycle, but we're kind of getting back on track here. We just have to accommodate for obviously like when you or I are not around and able to record.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Do you want to talk about anime?
Let's do it.
Cool. This is going to be a sampler and a wrap-up episode, so we'll touch on the stuff that we watched like an episode of, and then we'll go a little bit deeper into the stuff that we did end up finishing.
Yeah.
You watched a couple of things that I didn't, which is like it's sports. It's Renu's.
It's mostly
corner.
Sports. It's my sports corner. That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about Tomo-chan is a Girl, which is a pretty popular web manga. I feel like it was one of the like really big breakout web manga successes. Because it, I believe it predates. God, what is that? What is that one? The one about the Nagatoro. I think it predates like Nagatoro by a little bit. But it's kind of like it's like gen mates with the the one that's about the two office workers, like the really tiny little girl and the big boy. I think those came out like around the same time. But like I feel like recently we've seen a lot more of these kind of like big web manga releases. Like obviously stuff like One Punch Man kind of had the intermediary step of becoming a professionally serialized manga done by, you know, an acclaimed artist, but then you have stuff like Mob Psycho, which was just adapted directly from the web. So this is one of those. It's a yonkoma, so it's like a, you know, a 4-panel comedy that is about a girl who is quite boyish, and the boy that she likes, who just like anytime she tries to like be like, you wanna ooh, he's just like, haha, what a joke, that's so funny,
bro.
Brother, yeah.
My brother, my friend.
My brother. I think this went on for like 400 or 500 chapters, like by the time I stopped reading it.
Wow.
But honestly, it's a cute, it is exactly what it says on the tin. Like there's no real surprises about it. It is like popular for a reason. Like it's pretty funny. It's pretty it's pretty cute at like certain points, definitely. And I think everybody just kind of likes nobody's gonna say no to like a mutual pining story, right? Like, I think that the anime was okay. I think it was an okay adaptation. It looks fine. It sounds fine. It's not like stellar,
right,
in any regard, but it feels like it's like it is an adaptation for fans of the manga. So
okay, I think I didn't know that it was a yonkoma, which in that case I think they did a decent job with the adaptation in that regard, because I feel like the last time we watched a yonkoma adaptation that I can remember anyway was the one about the healer. And
yeah. That one was a very awkward adaptation.
Yeah, that one wasn't very good, but this one doesn't feel awkward in that regard.
Yeah. As far as adapting a 4-panel into an anime, it reads like a continuous like story, so it seems fine.
Yeah.
Okay. The ice guy and his cool female colleague was something that I have read a little bit of the manga for. I actually really like the art style for it. I think it's really cute. The anime was cozy and cute and sleepy.
Yes.
And probably something that I would rather read than watch, if I'm being honest. But like, I think the anime adaptation was again like fine. I think it was okay.
Yeah, I think if you want something that's slower paced, with like very like gradual steps in terms of like the growing intimacy between these two people and their growing relationship, then the anime might be for you. But for the like, I guess if you were to read the manga, you can kind of set the pacing a little more so that it's a little slow, you can read it more quickly or something like that. Yeah, it is a very like, it feels like you're watching two people with really low blood pressure who are also like very like not emotionally expressive people fall in love, which is cute, right? You don't normally get that. You usually get one of them is not emotionally expressive and then the other one is super the opposite, right? This one, in this regard, they're like the same, but
they're both not very expressive, but in different ways.
Yes, exactly. So it is cute. Yeah, it is, and it also, I don't think like really surprised us in any way in terms of like the synopsis and trailer versus the actual content that we watched.
No, not in any way. But yeah, it definitely has that kind of Iyashike sort of Honobono like good vibes to it.
Yeah.
Like, if you just like want to turn your brain off and watch something like cute and like fuwa, this one definitely is one to go for. Fuwa. Okay. Next, Sugar Apple Fairy Tale. Which
we could not turn our brains off for this one.
sometimes you watch a show and you really want to turn your brain off about it, and every 10 seconds it just like turns back on. Like,
yes, exactly.
It's like the disbelief is like so hard to suspend. Like, okay, there's like a couple of things about this, right? Like a couple of things about the sort of world building that are just kind of weird. Like the fact that there's fairies and like most of them are small, but then there are like human-sized fairies, and it's like, why does this distinction exist in the first place, right? Like, why are there tiny fairies and big fairies, but the big fairies are obviously there to be like romantic interests or whatever, right? And
maybe they explain it and we didn't get to that part.
Maybe. And then there's also like the sugar sculpting thing. Like the fairies love sugar sculptures, and I think it's like they eat them. I guess,
sure.
or I think it maybe even had something to do with their like reproduction or something, which was interesting.
I don't remember that part.
I'm not certain about that, but I feel like that was a detail that was talked about.
No, I believe you. I think my mind might have shut it out if that was the case.
Right. Yeah. And like it's about like making sugar sculptures, and like in the first episode she doesn't even make a sugar sculpture. All she does is buy a slave. Which is
so you get to see a flashback of her mother doing the sugar thing and like showing her daughter, and then her daughter, rather than doing the sugar thing, participates in fairy slavery.
I don't understand.
And we're not being hyperbolic. They
call it slavery.
They call it slavery in the show.
There are slavers. They wear like slave collars, and they have this kind of like they have this sort of like folk talesy thing where like, you know, if you take the wings of the fairy, they can't rebel against you, because if you crush them, they'll die. And it's like, bro, this is like actual straight up slavery.
It apparently
Why?
The show was trending on like TikTok or whatever as a cute
romance.
the new age romance anime, like kind of like how when we were young it might have been like the magical girl stuff, right? Where it was like, you know, like Kamikaze Kaito Jean and that kind of stuff, right? And then the way this is touted is like a modern day version of that, but I don't remember the series that we watched promoting slavery. At least not in I mean, you know, there might have been, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like, why? Like the biggest question that I have that I keep coming back to is like, why is it slavery? Because like, honestly, I don't actually think it's that important to the narrative. Okay, so here's the problem, right? Is that like the narrative that is being told is basically like, she's like, oh, I don't think of fairies as slaves. I think of them as people. And so she buys a slave, a fairy slave, and she is like, here, I'll give you your wings back. I'll give you your freedom back so that you could choose whether you want to be with me or not. And it's like, cool, but it's still slavery. And like, the narrative is not okay because you're a slave, like a good slave master. Like, you still participated in the buying of like a living sentient being.
Yeah, like, she didn't immediately free him either, like upon buying him, right? She kept him, and he tries to manipulate her into freeing him, and then kind of chastises her in a way too for being so naive about the whole situation.
Right, he's just like yeah, why?
Right, and she's like, yeah, maybe I am stupid, but and she's like being so crying and whiny and also like blushy about it because she's also attracted to him, and it's just so bizarre, the tonal shift of the juxtaposition of light romantic shoujo and slavery, like real,
yeah,
not real as in like living day slavery, but just it is portrayed as actual slavery in the show,
and it's like a fairly prominent part of the show.
Yeah, it's a huge part of their society.
It's not even like oh yeah, slavery still exists or whatever, right? It's like no, like they're actively participating and engaging with the topic of slavery, and it's like yeah, like your main character is like, yeah, slavery is bad, and like we're supposed to sympathize with the main character, and it's just like, why did it have to be like this to begin with? Like, if you wanted a kind of like drama wrought, sort of angsty, brooding, dark, male lead, right? There's like so many other ways that you can do it, even like without slavery. Like, if you wanted to go with this fairy angle, it's just like, fairies and humans don't really get along, but sometimes they, find each other or whatever, right? And he's just like, oh, I guess I'll reluctantly protect. Like, because like the narrative, obviously, like, the structure of it you can see from a mile away. It's like you have this naive girl who like wants to hold out hope for like the goodness of people, and she doesn't treat anybody differently, right? And then you have this jaded, like, oh, I hate the world and everything, edgy, like brooding, man.
He's the bad boy.
Yeah, he's like kind of a bad boy, right? Yeah. And like he's just like, oh no, we can't get along. Like, human beings are awful at heart or whatever, right? And then the entire narrative is like about just the transformation of like from that point to like, oh, maybe I do have feelings about this one person, and like I do care, and like I'm beginning to see the goodness of people or whatever. And it's like, that narrative is fine. Like, that narrative is the basis for quite a lot of, I would say, romance from the, aughts, like, to the early to mid 2000s. But as soon as you kind of put the slavery in, it's like, why? Like, this is the thing, and it's obviously because Japan has such a different historical relationship to slavery, like, and such a different, like, current cultural landscape around it, right? That they can sort of talk about it very, like, very freely, very blasé. They can just kind of do whatever with it, and a lot of people will not see anything wrong with it. And for us growing up here with our cultural context, it's like, no.
We're extra sensitive about that kind of thing.
Like, this is the kind of thing that I like, that really turns me off of a lot of isekais. Like, when the main character is like, oh, I'm gonna buy slaves, but like I'm like a good slave master, and like sometimes like he doesn't even set them free. He's just a quote unquote good slave master, and it's like,
well, yeah, we when we watched the first episode of Shield Hero, we had a problem with it just because of that angle.
Yeah, man, Rising of the Incel Hero, what a throwback.
But yeah, I wonder, and I think we might have talked about this too while we were watching it, but I wonder, because she is 15 years old, and the fairy is obviously much older than her, if the slavery aspect was kind of created, I mean, a dual purpose way of like sowing conflict in the world, but also giving her power in their relationship dynamic, right? Because ordinarily, a much older man being with a 15-year-old is gonna, the power is gonna be in his hands, but this is kind of like their artificial way of trying to like reconcile that, and maybe that's another reason why it doesn't quite sit well.
I definitely do think that there is like something to that.
Yeah.
But I also just think that really at the end of the day, when it comes down to fiction about like immortal beings, I feel like the age gap really just like kind of goes out the window. Like, it is obviously an integral part of these stories, right? To have like this kind of like, mysterious, powerful old man this mysterious, powerful, like immortal being, and this like girl who has like usually like she's either mistreated or she was in a bad family situation, or like in this case like she's just like an orphan, right? And like I honestly think that at the point at which you're introducing like immortal mortal love dynamics, I think it doesn't really matter. Like, that isn't to say like I think it's like, oh, that's totally Gucci. Like it's literally like if you are doing that, you just kind of have to accept on the premise that it's like a little bit weird, and like I think it's fine if it is, right? As far as fiction goes, like a lot of people are just like, a lot of people are monster fuckers. A lot of people are really into vampires, right?
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
I honestly feel like that kind of like that almost like weird power balance, I feel like is kind of the point for a lot of these narratives, and and like I think that's fine. Like I think that it's obviously not for everybody, but I don't think it has to be, right? Like if you like that sort of story, it's like, that's the kind of story that you will read, and if you don't like it, like you won't be reading it, right? Like this is like the thing about like the Ancient Magus Bride is like it's sort of the exact same dynamic.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't really care about whether or not there's like a power imbalance there. Like it's just the premise. You kind of have to just accept it, right? And like it's like, to me it feels so cowardly to like introduce slavery so that you can flip the power dynamic so that there's some amount of equality between them.
Yeah, and I think that's the impression that I'm getting, is that, I mean, I could be wrong, and it could just be that they wanted the world conflict to just be about slavery and not, and not have the implications of their power dynamic or whatever. But yeah, it just rubs me the wrong way that that's how they ended up going about it.
Yeah, I mean,
especially,
it's just clear that they just didn't have. They couldn't conceive of another way of sticking the main two characters together, because like otherwise, why would they stay together?
Right. Yeah.
And like there are other ways that you could do it, but this is just the way that they landed at it. Anyway, it is, if you can remove yourself from that, it might be enjoyable. But to be honest, I actually don't know, right? Because I don't actually know what the point of this show is. Like, it looks like it's some kind of like competition show, I think. Like they're competing to be sugar sculptors or something. So like maybe it's like actually like a big tournament arc with some like romance elements, and like what actually is the narrative?
Yeah, I can't really see the shape of the story either as far as the trajectory goes, aside from the fact that that the two of them are going to fall in love.
Right. I know exactly the trajectory of their dynamic. I don't actually know what the story itself is about.
I feel like it's going to end up being that she frees the slaves.
Okay. Okay. If the narrative of Sugar Apple Fairy Tale is that she becomes like the John Brown of fairy slavery and just starts fucking killing people that are slavers, like maybe there is something there, honestly. But I don't know if somehow don't think that is going to be what it is.
I think he would kill them. I don't think she would. At least from what I know so far, is that, I mean, she tried to help the little fairy, right? When she came across a little fairy being abused by someone in town, she helped it. And so that's why I think that's the nod to that trajectory, is that she's going to try and help the slaves. And I agree. I feel like it's going to be like she's going to try to use like the most sort of pacifist like ooh way of trying to like win the public over to like being like maybe slavery is bad, right? Mm-hmm. It's like it's just like a setup and a narrative that rings so hollow. Yeah, he's going to be her motivation, right? Because she's going to get to know him better and she's going to feel more and more sympathetic to his cause. He's going to teach her more about like why fairies are being hecked over, and Eventually, when they start developing feelings for each other, he's gonna be more and more of her bodyguard. I mean, at first he's doing it out of obligation because she has his wing, but then later on he's going to do it because he has feelings.
Yeah, it's not just slavery now, it's feelings. It's a relationship.
Eventually she's going to give him back his wing, and he's going to have the choice as to whether to ditch her or not. And he's going to stay. Maybe he'll ditch her for a little bit, but he'll stay. He'll come back to her.
It's going to be either like, no, I will stay with you immediately, or it's going to be like, he's like, or like, he's like, fine. And he leaves and he's like, I can't help but worry about you, and comes back. Or he's gonna be like, or it's gonna be like, he leaves intending on always coming back, and she's just like, Sniff, he never really cared about me. And then he'll show up again, like, hey, I'm back. Like, I didn't, like, I was always meaning to come back for you or whatever. It's like, I understand what it is, and if you are 15 and you like these kinds of stories, and you can. Like, you have never had a critical thought about the presence of slavery in narrative, I think this series is fine.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, is that I think it's actually, it's definitely aimed for that age group, but also, like, for adults who have the hearts of 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff that they want.
This is, like, popular with people who are 30 years old, who are still like, 15-year-olds are so hot, or whatever, right? Like, no. Okay, that's not necessarily what I mean, but like people who are like in their 30s, but still are like, they still sort of insert themselves into narratives, like of anime, like they are, the same age that they were, or like the same age as the characters. And it's like, at a certain point, you just have to understand that as a 35-year-old, your relationship to a character who is supposed to be like 16 is just supposed to be radically different, right? You just like I don't want to sit here and just be like, you have to do this, but like, you just kind of. Like, at a certain point, you have to look inward at yourself and think about the way that you engage with narrative and why, right? Like, it is not problematic for adults to enjoy media catered towards younger people, but I think it is a problem if you are an adult who only watches media that is aimed towards children. I think that I feel like you just have to grow up or touch some grass,
They can just jump into the next thing and never think about anything. Just keep the cycle going.
I'm not gonna lie to you. At this point in my life, it's like a little bit harder for me to enjoy school anime. Like, straight up. Unless it's like really good, like like Skip and Loafer is airing this season and it's really good, right?
Yes.
Unless it's something like that, like I can't accept school life as the default anymore. Okay, so recently I've been reading a lot of manga. Obviously, if you're part of the podcast Discord, you've seen me posting about it. I basically got into I just really got into reading about office lady girls love.
You love the office lady tropes.
I know. So like the thing to me is like, I can't deal with high school narratives anymore because like I can't really relate to high schoolers anymore. And
sure.
The office worker narratives like are just so much more appealing to me, and like of like adults that kind of feel like they've lost control of their lives, or adults who are kind of early on in that transitory period where they're just like, I don't actually know how to be an adult yet, or like people that are just so jaded that they're just like, I go to work, I come home, I drink a beer, that's all I do, right?
Yeah, I definitely get that.
I'm just so much more into that now. And I mean, the relationship,
It's just like when we were young, we couldn't really relate to the office worker stuff,
right?
Now we're that age. Now we're the office worker age, and we can't relate to the teenage high school stuff.
Yeah, like I like most of the time, I really do just have to watch or like consume media about adults, right? There are certain exceptions, like there are certain narratives, like especially like really like like trash fire dramas, I think are really, really well suited for sort of school settings, because like obviously when you're growing up and you're like kind of 16, you know, in that age range, like everything is it's just so fucking chaotic and dramatic, and everything feels like the end of the world. And that really makes for quite some excellent trash fire drama. Anyway, tangent aside, let's talk about the next thing, which is Handyman Saitou in Another World, which is an extremely mundane isekai, like not in the sense of it's a normal isekai, but in that it is an isekai about extremely mundane things, which I actually like. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it was a very easy to watch show.
I think this might also be based on a web manga. But don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% certain, but it's a pretty short form, story where like everything is just kind of these like little contained episodes. And that is basically what the anime is. It shows like exactly what that is. It's just like scene, end of scene, scene, end of scene, scene, end of scene, right? It's like, it has the cadence of just like episodes, right? Of like short form episodes, but just compiled together so that there's a lot of them to make up a 24-minute block, right? And yeah, I mean, if you're into the idea of like isekai, but you don't like the like power fantasy and you just kind of want to watch like people live in an isekai world, I think this one's great. Like, it's just about a handyman. Like, he gets isekai, he uses his like lockpicking knowledge, and you know, he fixes things, and like it's pretty cute, honestly.
It is cute.
Yeah, and the anime adaptation is fine, I think.
Yeah.
It looked okay from what I recall.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago that I watched that episode.
No, yeah, it was fine. And the what I liked about it is like you get to learn a little practical knowledge, you know, basically every episode. He teaches you a little something.
Well, that's cute. A cute slice of life show.
Yeah.
All right, High Card, which was interesting.
So we watched the first episode together, and then I went and watched another episode on my own because I wanted to know what was going on, and I still don't know what's going on.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, nothing about it to me was terribly captivating. It was decidedly okay.
It was very mediocre, and I think what they would have had to do to really draw an audience is to really, really lean into the like stylistic aspect of the show. Is generally what these kinds of shows end up doing, is like they'll be really, really stylish, like Fugo Keiji or whatever, to draw an audience, and then hope that carries them through the rest of the show. But in this case, it doesn't quite lean enough into that. And it is extremely action-packed, right? There's like cars exploding and people dying, and they're in a casino and all this kind of stuff. And the action isn't quite, I guess, like, what am I trying to say? Like, well put together enough for it to feel super exciting either. So it just kind of like hits every note like in a very mid way.
It definitely is like you delivered the assignment. Is what it feels like. It's like congratulations, here's a C+.
Yeah.
Like you passed, right? It's not terrible, but it's not terribly interesting either. The directing was nothing special. You're right though, the animation was just not really engaging enough for the amount of like bullshit bonkers like stuff that actually happens. Like, people are like exploding cars, and that should be interesting, and it's just like not really.
Yeah, it's so interesting how they make all that stuff uninteresting.
Yeah. I just like it all sort of blends together in my brain. Like, it just feels like an anime of all time, like TMCR. It's like an anime, like, period.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an anime.
Kaina of the Great Snow Sea, which was interesting. It's a CG anime, which obviously always kind of comes with its own baggage. It didn't look too terrible for a CG anime, and the world building had like some potential to be interesting. Again, though, this series was just kind of mid.
Yeah, to me, I would have been more interested in this than High Card because at the very least, like you said, the world building is interesting and different. And I think the narrative kind of it relies on that for you to maintain your interest because there isn't a whole lot going on otherwise. They present this mysterious world to you, and they have two characters that are from different parts of it. One is from basically like the atmosphere of the Earth, and then the other one is from the ground of Earth, right? Like they're separated by a large distance, and they end up together, and then you slowly but surely learn about the conflicts that that basically caused the situation that the Earth is in, and their backgrounds and stuff like that. So if you're looking for, I guess, a different type of watch, this could be up your alley. But it does start off like it's not like super exciting or anything, right? Like the pacing is kind of, it's not lackadaisical. It's not very slow either. It's just it's not like super like on your toes, like keep up kind of thing either.
Yeah, it's pretty methodical, and I actually think that it does do a better job than High Card does of engaging you with its first episode.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, just something about the cadence of it was better.
Yeah.
Okay, Giant Beasts of Ars, which, if you are going to watch any, like, action show from this season, this probably is the one that I would recommend. We actually did end up watching a couple episodes of it. The concept was interesting. Like, you have this sort of like, these people are like weapons wielded by paladins, which are like people that fight monsters and stuff. And I think the world building was like kind of okay, really, overall. The animation was good. The pacing was fine. I think as Giant Beasts of Ars, to me, felt like a solidly good anime. It wasn't great, at least not the episodes we watched, but it was definitely good.
Yeah, it wasn't like super stellar or anything, but it also wasn't terrible. And it was interesting enough that we watched it for I guess like multiple episodes. We didn't finish it, but we did watch a decent amount.
Yeah, we watched like 3 or 4 episodes, I think.
Yeah.
So it was okay. The other thing, if you want to watch like just a played straight fantasy with some interesting elements to it, I think this is a pretty good pick for you. Like, if you like Rage of Bahamut, the anime, an anime that is weirdly good for being a mobile game adaptation, it's pretty worth watching, I think. Yeah. Okay. So that's all of the stuff. Oh, actually, there is one more show that I want to talk about. I did not put this on the list because I completely forgot about it, which is The Fire Hunter, which we did not finish, but
no.
I think we watched like 7 episodes. And
a lot of it, yeah.
Yeah. It is based on a novel, and that novel is and the concepts introduced are really interesting, and the world building is actually really, really interesting and engaging. The only problem is that the anime is, how do I put this? It's not, it doesn't even feel like I don't feel okay calling it bad. It's just weird.
They make a lot of decision making in terms of how they portray the visuals that at least I haven't seen in any other series.
It's okay. I will say it's not good. Right? Like, okay, there are a couple of problems with Fire Hunter, even though like everything about the world is so interesting to me, and it's the only reason I watched like 7 or 8 episodes, right? It's like a world where natural fire doesn't exist because it causes people to explode if they're near natural fire. So the way that people have light and warmth is like this ambrosious like liquid that comes from monsters. It's like monster blood, basically. But the monsters have to be killed with these sickles, which the origin of the sickle is actually fucking raw as hell. Because it is like, it's basically like somebody essentially forged the sickle, like the goddess like forged the sickle from her own body, like while it was on fire, because you need fire to forge something, right? And that was the first sickle that allowed people to, you know, hunt the beasts and get this like artificial fire or whatever.
It's so
like,
metal.
That's fucking raw as hell. That is like awesome. But the anime is like not great. It's kind of, I think that the pacing of it is all right. Like it has this sort of vibe that is like kind of somber and melancholic, and it has a sort of ennui to it, right? Like it's like everything is just kind of depressing all the time, and like it's like quiet until it isn't, and there's stuff that happens, people kill monsters, there's like lots of dog, but there's like 2 sort of big problems with the animation, which is like, one, sometimes it isn't. Like, sometimes it straight up is not animation. They will start, like, you know, they will have a scene of, like, limited animation, and then they'll just pop it out. Like, they'll just, like, pop out the keyframe and, like, color it in with, you know, with, like, colors. And then they'll just hold on that picture while characters talk to each other.
Yep.
Or something happens. Sometimes characters will talk to each other and their mouths don't move. Sometimes a conversation happens like with everything out of frame just so they don't have to animate. And then sometimes when the animation is there, it's vaguely there, right? Like if you go and you watch this series and you watch like all of the dog animations and the animation of the dragon in episode like 6, I think, it's like fucking crazy because they're just shapes, and it doesn't feel like it was like bad. It feels like it was made that way on purpose, and that's like weird and baffling to me.
I wonder if some of these choices were made to save budget, but also to try and make it stylistic so that it doesn't look like as bad as it could have been. Like, okay, we've got a low budget, so let's see what we can do with it creatively so that it doesn't just look cheap.
My sort of opinion of it is just that, like, honestly, I can't hate it. Because, like, one, it's, like, so baffling to watch sometimes that, like, you can have a right laugh with your pals about it, right? It's kind of, like, sometimes it's so bad it's good, right? And then, on the other hand, also, like, I kind of almost like that it's janky. Like, it is the exact opposite of polished, right? It's not a polished animation. There's clearly so many cracks showing from the production and some very odd choices made about the style of it, but it's honestly kind of so weird in that regard that I like can't really bring myself to hate it. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, this is the best thing ever, but like I kind of like that it's not so polished or smooth.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was an interesting watch for that reason too, is that, I mean, like, on the one hand, I'm like, well, maybe just reading the novel would be better. I mean, especially because, like, maybe the visuals can be distractingly different.
Right.
But the world building is, of course, like we said, is so interesting and cool that I think, regardless, the novel might be worth a read. based on that regard. But then on the other hand, it's like I've not seen a studio address these problems in such a way before, and I just kind of want to keep watching to see what else they pull out.
I like the fact that they made a decision and that the decision was not good. Because I would rather they make a not good decision that is like catastrophically hilarious than a very mediocre like non-decision like that becomes nothing, right? Like the thing about something like High Card is it really feels like an anime that was made by committee. And the thing about Fire Hunter is it feels like the director just made a choice about the way that certain things were going to be depicted, and they just went with it because they're like, hey, less work for us or whatever, or like, you know, or maybe like they were trying to express something with how vague the animation is sometimes. Like in the opening, the animation of the like people fighting is like kind of cool. It's like kind of really good. And then in the show, it's like just shapes sort of flying at each other, which is bonkers.
I think probably the opening is how they ideally would have wanted to portray the anime if they had enough resources for it, but they couldn't. And so they're like, okay, what can we do that isn't that, but can still kind of get the point across? And so they went with something that looked more vague and artistic versus like attempting a low budget version of what they did in the intro.
Right. It really feels like this is an anime more so than a lot of other anime that you just like see the production behind it. And I really think that like outside of the anime itself that's just like an interesting thing.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I would love to know more about the production of this thing.
I want to know about the production of this anime so fucking bad. Like I need to know what was going on here.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Endo and Kobayashi Live, the latest on Tsundere, Villainess, Lieselotte. This is an anime adaptation of a manga that I enjoy, and it was pretty good.
Was it like a close adaptation?
Yeah, it was a pretty faithful adaptation, at least to the manga. I don't know if it's based on a light novel. Honestly, I think that the take it has on the villainous sort of thing is really funny. The fact that they're just like commentators that can speak to the prince, and they're just like, okay, man, here's what a tsundere is, and he's like, what? And he just like falls in love with his fiance, who he previously thought was like hated him, right, because she's a tsundere.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good. I think that the real benefit of having an anime adaptation is the vocal performances.
Yes.
And I would say that's definitely the sort of high point of this series. Because other than that, like, it's cute. It's a perfectly serviceable adaptation. Doesn't look really stellar in any regard. It's definitely just, you delivered the assignment. I also didn't know what the end of the plot was. The point at which I stopped reading the manga was when she gets possessed by the witch, which is like pretty close to the end, actually, it seems.
Yeah.
Or at least for what the anime decided to portray. And it was kind of wild that it was like, oh, these two worlds are real, and this guy made a game out of the worlds because he's a weird god that fell in love with his daughter?
Ew.
Or something like, yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, I mean it's pretty good. I mean, it's cute. There are only a couple of things that really like they sort of gloss over, which is one of the things that they glossed over, which I thought was really funny, was they gloss over the fact, like they do touch on it, but they don't really elaborate. But in the manga, they basically find out that the main character, like the like little pink-haired girl, for some reason is like level 99 and has like a billion strength stat.
Yes.
Like she's just like extremely strong and buff.
Yeah.
And that wasn't portrayed as explicitly there. So that was the only thing I really noticed. But I always thought that was a very funny joke. The idea that like, hey, this protagonist is supposed to be like level like 3, and she's like level 99 and has like 999 strength.
Yeah,
it's like it all goes into the punch.
Right. They showed that she was way stronger than anyone else in their world, but they didn't show why. They just were like, she's very strong. Her magic is crazy. And she just used it to help people, and that was it.
Yeah. I mean, it was honestly like it's really cute because it's like you have just like, you know, the main romance between Lieselotte and what was the boy's name? Like Sigward or something.
Prince.
I don't fucking Jigu.
Oh yeah, Jigu.
Yeah, Prince Sieg something. Maybe, I think it was probably Sigward or maybe Siegfried or one of those two. Anyway, you have that one, and then you have the secondary romance between the main character, the like protagonist character of the game, who I never remember the name of, and Lord Ball.
Sugita.
Yeah, Tomokazu Sugita. Honestly, that relationship is always like the really funny part of the story, and I think they really nailed that one. Mm-hmm. And then you have the greater sort of romance between Endo and Kobayashi, and it's really cute. It is definitely a casual watch, I would say.
Yes, we watched through all of it because it was just, you know, an easy show to wind down with. And yeah, it was fun. I quite like the idea of like schmucks like us watching an anime or something like that, and as we're commenting, the characters could hear it, kind of deal. Yeah.
Imagine you were watching something and you could just right then and there clear up the misunderstanding.
Yeah, it's quite
beautiful,
satisfying. Yeah, beautiful.
You're just like, scream! Why can't you just do this?
Yeah,
but now
and
you
they're
can.
Like, oh, yeah, and then the character hears you, and they do the thing, and you're like, oh,
yep,
well, that solves that.
Okay, let's talk about Trigun Stampede, which is the name on everybody's lips this season.
Oh boy,
or boy, last season, I guess.
You've probably seen my man's all over the internet by now.
They yassified him. So, Trigun Stampede is a reboot of Trigun, done by Studio Orange, Trigun Stampede is a reboot of Trigun, done by Studio Orange, who is responsible for Beastars and Land of the Lustrous. And they're basically the 3D CG studio that really gets it and understands. And
yeah, they set the standard, or I guess they set the bar.
they're the only studio that like makes CG anime that like actually looks like anime. I think what they I've heard that one thing they do is that they have found a way to vary the frame rate in the same way that you might do in, you know, traditional 2D animation.
Oh.
But I don't know the technical process behind it. But this anime is so gorgeous. It's pretty.
If you haven't seen any of Studio Orange's work, but you've seen stuff like... You've been impressed by, I should say, like stuff that Guilty Gear has done, where it's technically 3D models,
right,
but they look like 2D anime, or like Studio Kara, also in the Evangelion movies, the Rebuild movies, used a lot of 3D that looks like 2D. If you've ever been impressed by that kind of stuff, definitely check out Studio Orange's stuff, because each time they make a new animation, it looks not only better than the last, but also like you would never expect 3D anime to ever look this good.
I think really what's impressive is that every time they put out an anime, it seems to be more technically proficient than the last one. Like, even watching Land of the Lustrous and all of its sort of visual, impressiveness, and then Beastars and like the kind of narrative that was, and then you have Trigun, which is like a really like classic traditional anime, and they kind of nail it, right? It's so pretty to watch, and everything, like, you really forget that you're watching something that is like CG, which a lot of the times, like, it's like really noticeable when something is CG, but like it just like kind of fades. Like you notice it is CG in the moments when they do something that is like not super common in 2D animation, because it would be prohibitively difficult to achieve. But CG does have certain advantages, like the ability to keep a very consistent character model, or very consistent models in general in a 3D space, and kind of like move the camera wherever you need to, right? So in the climactic fight between Vash and Knives, like, there is like a scene where they like get tossed out the window and they just like fly through the city, and it's like this one long continuous shot, and it's like so cool.
It felt like a super like hyper extension of what they did in the first episode of this show, which, by the way, if you guys haven't watched any of Trigun Stampede, I would highly encourage you to at least watch the first episode of the show, because it is one of the most visually impressive of the series, where it was a long action shot and you're following Vash running through the city, crossing buildings and all that kind of stuff, and the camera is very dynamic, and it's similar things that they did in Hoseki no Kuni as well. They had a lot of dynamic camera angles for all of the action scenes, and then in the finale of Trigun Stampede, they do all of that, but in the sky and around a whole city.
They were flexing so hard with this one.
Yeah, and as a 3D animator, I can tell you how difficult it is to maintain a sense of visual stability while also moving the camera and moving the characters and having them do crazy stuff on screen and also have it look good, right? Like, all of these factors combined, like, I don't know how long it took them to design these scenes, like from storyboard to animation or whatever, but like, it is so difficult what they pull off, like, consistently in these shows, from Hoseki no Kuni to, they have some good shots in Beastars too, even though that's not even a necessarily super action-packed series. Right. And then they do it again in Trigun. It's amazing.
I mean, that's like the thing about Studio Orange that I find to be a real strength, is that they nail the sort of big, bombastic action in a way that 2D really struggles with. And at the same time, I think that there's no other studio that just like manages the little tiny details of characters and of animation so well, right? The fact that like the character expressions feel so like real and vibrant,
amazing.
And they're so, like, the characters are so expressive, which often is one of the sort of big hallmarks of CG anime, is that like it's really hard for them to have like good looking expressions, right? Without it
really
just being
stiff.
like a static face. So the fact that they pull that off is crazy to me.
Yeah, I was like, from the get, when I saw the way that I think the first focus of it is like on Meryl's face in the first episode. You get to see the way her expressions just kind of like morph as she's like talking. Sometimes she's pouting, sometimes she's like sassy, like whatever. And you get to see the expressions on her face, and they don't look weird. Like, her mouth isn't like puckered strangely, like like the mouth region especially is like really difficult to animate and morph in 3D. But they do it perfectly, and it looks just like an anime.
They nail it.
Yeah, they nail it so well. At no point am I like, oh, that face looks kind of like kind of weird. Like you see it all the time, and like I don't know, like AAA games or whatever even don't always nail it, right? But this anime consistently nails it.
Yeah, it is exceedingly difficult to do what Studio Orange does, and they do it so bombastically well. It's like kind of ridiculous. I also really like that they know exactly what medium they're working with and the advantages, right? Like obviously you have the big like long panning shots that you can just move around 3D space so well. You have these like really cool zooming dynamic shots, right, where you move like here, and it really gives it that sense of motion. But honestly, just the fact that like because it's in 3D and they have certain liberties they can take when you're using models, right? They make the characters so expressive in ways that aren't just limited to their face. Like they move their bodies a lot, which really gives it this like kind of frenetic, chaotic vibe, even when it's just like people talking to each other. And I think that actually works pretty well for Trigun. Like the story of Trigun Stampede it's like it's a reboot story. So it is a much more serious sort of like, very dramatic story compared to the way that Trigun is kind of in the manga and in the original anime, which is like a little bit more lighthearted, but like obviously all of the drama and like darkness is like still underneath there in the core, right? Trigun Stampede just kind of like pulls that out and decides like, this is the thread that we want to play with.
Yes, it's a much darker show.
It is. They gave Vash extreme depression. Like it's very late stage depression. And honestly, like I really enjoyed it. They capture a frenetic sort of energy that I think is important to Trigun because I've read a little bit of the manga, which is to say I've read the original run of the manga, which is only like 20 chapters, and then I read a little bit of Trigun Maximum, I think, which is the sequel, which that one ran for much longer. But the original Trigun is like really like vague. Like I actually had a really hard time following it sometimes. It was so vague. Like stuff just kind of happens, and like honestly, Trigun is just vibes. It like 100% of it, it's just vibes.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I mean, and then in Trigun, the ending of the manga is that Knives activates, the plant power inside Vash and then blows a hole in the moon. And obviously that did happen here, but differently. And
yes, differently.
Not the moon. So it's an interesting take. I'm really, really curious to see more of it because obviously they really understand the attachment that people have to the classic property, right? Because people are like, they gave Vash a little yassifying haircut. Look at him. Right, and
they removed Millie. They hate Millie.
And then at the end, they're just like, okay, here you go. Here's Vash's like haircut.
And here's Millie.
Here's Millie. And
they were like, by the way, this entire thing was basically like we set it further in the past, and now we're gonna give you all your classic stuff in the future.
Honestly, I really think that having like read the original manga, I do think that they built out the story in a linear way. Like really well. Like I think it's really interesting the way that they are reinterpreting certain parts of the story to make essentially like here what is like a sort of pre time skip and then a post time skip, right? Which does happen in the manga. But the sequence of events is a little different, and the timeline is a little different. And honestly, like, it's just, I really love seeing adaptations that aren't taking the source material one-to-one, but like kind of just doing their own thing with it. And I think Studio Orange is like really quite good about doing that. They're a very idiosyncratic studio. Like, you kind of know what you're in for with a Studio Orange anime.
Yeah, for me, it doesn't feel like any of the decisions that they make in terms of changing what they're doing from the source material to be anything that's like super self-indulgent or like just to make it different or whatever. It feels very purposeful. Like, we want to tell a specific type of story that we drew from the original property, and we're gonna do that. And I feel like they have a lot of room there too when they pick, like, when the source material is kind of vague, like Trigun, or even with Hoseki no Kuni, the source material there is pretty
also
vague as
pretty
well.
vague.
Yeah,
like, actually,
so
when you think about it.
Yeah. So I think they kind of do that on purpose so that, you know, they can tell their own thing. There's enough flexibility there for them to tell their own type of story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I quite like it. I kind of love that out of this season, at least for me, Trigun Stampede is the most visually impressive of the bunch, and it's a 3D anime, you know? Like, how often do we get to say that?
Nobody. Anytime Studio Orange releases an anime is how often we say that. Like,
right,
no one does it like Studio Orange.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about Buddy Daddies. I do want to talk about like Trigun sort of thematically at some point, but I have to crystallize my thoughts about it. Like, I'm not certain how I feel about certain things. I haven't formed all my thoughts about it yet. Like, I'm still trying to solve that Rubik's Cube, you know?
I mean, maybe we could do an episode on it at some point.
It's very doable. All right, Buddy Daddies, which was interesting? Question mark. I don't know what I was expecting from this anime other than like they're domestic life partners basically, and like it's like they're gay but they're not gonna say it, and they're gonna raise a child together.
Okay, we do have to talk about that, right? In terms of, okay, so inevitably this show will be compared to Spy Family because Spy Family just had its anime release, and it's not releasing this season, but this is. And it's two people who are involved in like it's not necessarily like espionage / assassination, but they are like spy assassins, right?
They're criminals.
Yes. They get hired to do jobs that involve killing people, and it's pretty assassin-like. They basically end up killing the father of this child who shows up to meet her father, and she doesn't realize that who he is or where he is. She just knows that he exists. She's here to meet him. He's dead. She doesn't know that. And these two assassins decide to take her in because they don't know what to do with her, and then they end up raising her. And on the one hand, I love kind of how they have the parent-child dynamic of they each have their own interesting backstories, right? Like one of them, you know, he lost his wife and his child. The other one, he's never known what a real like family dynamic is. And then she kind of fills in those voids for them, right? She kind of heals their trauma, so to speak. But I think for me, what really sells Spy Family is that the dynamic isn't just like a V that like funnels into like each parent caring for the child. Like the two adult figures also have an interesting dynamic of them getting closer and like, you know, maybe they will fall in love, you know, like that kind of thing. That's what's happening with Spy Family. And then in Buddy Daddies, it's just a V, right?
It is.
There isn't much of a dynamic between the adults aside from them being friends.
You are right, though. Like, even though they like live together and they're raising a child together, like it is shockingly chaste. Like, the relationship. Yeah. It's like... he's, like, more like... So, the one that is, like, more sort of motherly and nurturing is like a parent to both of them, honestly. Like, they're just both children. And, like...
Yeah.
I think that Buddy Daddies is definitely more of what it says on the tin than Spy Family, because Spy Family has this sort of expectation of being about parents raising a child, and actually it's really not about that at all. It's a lot more about the sort of hijinks that happen while trying to prevent war between two countries that used to be you know, that are sort of this, like, East-West Germany kind of vibe. Buddy Daddies is, like, so much more about just raising a child. It's like, completely about raising a child, while also, you know, being contract killers and trying to, like, balance these two things. And it's, like, it's pretty well done, all things considered. Like, the... you know, the child, Millie, or Miri, or whatever, Miri, is, like, I think that they really wrote her, like, well enough like a child that, you know, children can be unreasonable, children don't really understand, like, what's going on, children will do things that their parents tell them not to, because, like, you know, what else are they gonna do, right? So overall, the, like, parental dynamic is a lot stronger, but you are completely right in that the two male leads have, like, really nothing going on between them other than the fact that they live together and that they're friends. Like, when they say buddy daddy, they're actually, like, buddies. Like, it's not
they're
even, like...
They're actually just buddies.
Like, okay, they're not, like, even subtextually in a romantic relationship.
No, there's no, like, subtext even.
So the thing is, they are domestic life partners, right? Like, that's literally what they are. But, like, the relationship between them, the dynamic between them is just so chaste. Like, there's nothing.
Yeah. The most that you get out of it is that, like, when they take Miri to the daycare, the daycare workers kind of have to wrap their minds around the fact that two dads, and then they're like, yep, and then the daycare workers are open-minded enough. They're like, oh, okay, then,
that's cool.
You know, your daughter can stay here. We'll take care of her. And then that's it. And no one ever, like, brings up the fact that maybe they're, like, a couple or anything. They're just
two dads raising a child together, but they're not involved with one another, really.
Like, not at all. It's completely platonic. It like goes completely unaddressed, like, whatsoever. Like, any kind of, like, inkling is just gone. Like, I can't even, like, if you're someone who loves to ship this kind of thing, you would have to make up everything between them because there's nothing. I was
gonna say, like, the thing about it is, like, normally when you have a show like this, the yaoi bait is, like, really strong, but, like, actually this time they're just friends. Like, they're just platonic.
Yeah. There's there's not even bait there.
And, like, it's actually believable when they say that, because they're not, like, baiting you with, like, oh, look at these, their fathers together. Ooh. Yeah. It's like, there's, like, none of that. Should there have been some of that? Maybe.
It would have been fun. I would have enjoyed it.
Like, I would have liked to be here at the end of the season yelling about how, like, they're gay for each other, but they won't let them kiss on screen. But, like, but I'm not, because that's not what this is.
I'm a little perplexed by it, but at the same time, I'm not entirely mad about it, because not everything has to be gay.
I disagree. I'm also not mad about it.
I'm not mad about it because I can realistically see a situation out in the real world and not in the world of anime, where two people decide to live together domestically and raise a child together, and they both care for that child like parents. They have an equal partnership. They just don't have a romantic relationship, and I think that's fine. I do think it would have been nice if they were a couple, you know, a gay couple, and then they were raising this child. Yeah, but that's incredibly wishful thinking. And the fact that we get two dads raising a child, I think is nice, regardless.
Yeah. I mean, it is a non-traditional family arrangement, which is always pretty cool, right?
Yes.
I will say, I also thought that the last episode was really well done and really cute. Like the sort of time skip at the end that they show you, like they own a cafe.
Oh my god!
And like she's like a high schooler now, and like,
oh my goodness.
I'm actually really impressed. Like Buddy Daddies to me was the like A- anime of the season.
It like has like such a good self-contained story. Like it didn't feel like it went too long or too short.
It doesn't overindulge. It doesn't wallow. It's literally just like well-paced, a self-contained story within like 12 episodes, and it's over, and you get like a really satisfying ending. And I feel like that's so rare.
I got emotional over the ending. I was like, "What?
I really thought that was like the best part of the anime. Like, normally anime are really awful at ending, but like this one nails it.
It really, really sells the ending so well.
Yeah, like obviously there is the drama that happens in the last couple episodes of like her mom wants to take her back and then just like gets fucking stabbed to death, and then they just have to become her dads.
Yeah, some of the gore was crazy. Like the way that the last guy died too, the big bad assassino guy, who's been chasing them for a while.
Oh my god, yeah,
right? Wasn't that brutal?
That was pretty crazy, actually. There's some pretty like hardcore like killing people that happens.
Right. So for the people who don't want just a light and fluffy anime about raising a child, there is some action in this, kind of like Spy Family, where there's action in there too. But this one, I feel like, is bloodier. Honestly,
it's definitely a like PG-13, where like Spy Family is like PG.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's not quite R-rated, it's not quite NC-17, but it's like PG-13.
Yeah, pretty healthily PG-13.
Yeah. But honestly, like I was surprised with how much I enjoyed it. I don't know if surprised would be the right word, but like it kept its level of quality throughout the entire series. It was very consistent.
I would say I was surprised too, because I think because it was hot on the heels of Spy Family, that looking at it, it'd be like, oh, this is just a
Spy Family knockoff.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're just trying to ride on the success of Spy Family, which they may or may not have, but I think they did enough of a good job to make it its own thing.
Right.
That I'm not mad about that if that was the intent.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I feel like Buddy Daddies to me was the most fun show of the season.
Sure, yeah.
Like, of all of, like, obviously, Trigun Stampede, beautiful to watch. Some of the other ones we watched good in other ways. I feel like Buddy Daddies was the most fun I had watching an anime.
Yeah, it wasn't, like Trigun's, like, really, like, it's really sad sometimes. Like, really
it's
brings
depressing.
You down. Yeah, it's really a sad story sometimes. And then Buddy Daddies, it was a fun watch for sure.
All right, the magical revolution of the reincarnated princess and the genius young lady. So I knew going into this that this was like a girl's love story.
Yes.
I wasn't sure because I hadn't when I was reading the manga, not a ton of it was out. But I didn't know if they would, like, make it that explicit. But they did, which was nice.
For as like platonic and not gay as Buddy Daddies was,
Oh,
this
yeah.
is the exact opposite.
Majirevo basically took all of the homosexuality from Buddy Daddies, like just sucked it dry and like incorporated it into itself. Like
it is so explicitly like any possible conceivable angle in which you could be like, oh, they're just sisters, they're just friends being friends, they're gals being pals. Any kind of argument that you could possibly raise against this, it wipes it out.
They were so explicit and so thorough. It was that scene honestly fucking sent me, where it was just like, I love you, and it's like, you just mean that as friends. It's like, no, I want to marry and have sex with you as girls who are in love with each other.
The only way that they could have made it any better was if she looked directly at the camera, like directly
and it's like, this is Yuri.
Yes. We're not baiting you. This is it.
But yeah, honestly, I like this series. Like, I like this story. I wasn't expecting the anime to be as good as it was, because
it was amazing. Yeah.
For I don't know why, but the animation was like really good. It was like
really good.
It was one of the best action anime that aired. Yeah, actually.
Yeah. I agree. It was shockingly like the animation was shockingly proficient, considering like it's an adaptation of like, it's another isekai story,
right.
And like, it's clear that the production like really cared about this story, but also knew like how important it was to its audience, that they really, really, really sold it. It was a gorgeous animation.
Yeah, I mean, they basically like nailed the cadence of it, where it's like you have, the sort of limited animation of like people talking to each other, and then you have these like fight scenes where like there's actually some quite impressive animation in them, and they look really great. Like, that's just not what I was expecting from my from my Yuri isekai.
What is this attention to detail? What is this like fluid battle animation? It is really stunning.
Yeah, honestly, one of the best adaptations this season, which is funny because there's actually, I feel like Trigun obviously is a sort of adaptation. Majirevo is an adaptation. Endo and Kobayashi is an adaptation, and Campfire Cooking is an adaptation, and they're all pretty good in their own ways. Majirevo absolutely is like the best action anime, and like the best sort of overall quality, it feels. Putting Trigun aside, because visually that show is a masterpiece. Like, you can't. I mean, yeah, like. But yeah, honestly, like it's good. There is, it's Yuri because there's like an appropriate amount of drama.
Oh man, yeah. It's gals being in love because there is so much angst.
Yep. I will say I was pleasantly surprised with the side couples.
Yes, I was honestly like, I thought it would just be about the main couple, and then a side couple popped up that I wasn't expecting, and I was down for it.
You get a little bonus.
I did. Yeah.
There is like, I gotta be honest with you, there are a few things like more intimate than like biting your lip and feeding your blood to a vampire. Like,
she had
with
choices.
her mouth.
She could have given her blood from
anywhere,
like her arm, like she was beat up, and she chose this vampire girl was dying, and then the maid character who's very soup core decides that she gonna bite her own lip to draw blood from him and smooch the vampire girl. She didn't have to do that. She chose to do it. She chose to take that opportunity and make it happen.
Yeah, I was very happy with it. And honestly, like, I think there are only a couple of things that the anime glosses over that are sort of good context to have.
Yes.
But also, I think that I can see why they didn't, because that explanation works a lot better in text and manga than it does in anime. But I feel like, yeah, it can be a little bit confusing if you don't have the context that the written one provides.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, we can spoil it now because we're not a spoiler-friendly podcast, but I mentioned that it was an isekai anime. But you actually, while watching it, don't really learn that until kind of close to the end. That the protagonist is actually an isekai character. Before that, they don't really address it in a very meaningful way, other than the fact that she wasn't born being able to use magic like other people would in her situation. Like, she's a noble, and nobles are supposed to be able to use magic, but for some reason she can't, and it's because she was isekai'd. And yeah, you don't learn that until later when she confesses to her life partner that's what it is. And you don't really get to see any more of that beyond her explanation. She just says, this is what the situation is, and that's that. No, I don't think they even showed like a flashback or anything, right? I think I
think in the first or second episode they maybe talked about it, but it was pretty fast. Like, I knew going into it that it was
light.
An isekai. Yeah.
Yes.
And the isekai element only really matters for like one or two like character details, really. Like, it's actually not that prominent of a thing, right? Like, she's just isekai so that she can can basically be like no magic, but has like a lot of ideas for like things to do, right? Like,
yeah, she has a lot of alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sold, like, in terms of like how necessary it was for her to be isekai, but regardless, I do think it is a nice story.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, speaking of isekai, let's talk about Campfire cooking in another world with my absurd skill. This is one that I've also read the manga for, obviously, right? Like, if it's an anime that's adapted from an isekai and it looks pretty high profile, I've definitely read the manga. This is it's a cooking isekai, right? So there are quite a lot of isekai, and like isekai is sort of splintered into subgenres, and food-based isekai is like its own genre, basically. And I think this is probably one of my favorite takes on it, because it's literally just about a guy traveling and cooking food for his protective great wolf and slime. And
yes,
like, there's no real drama or stakes. It's literally just he just makes food every episode, and it looks great. And I like that.
He has the power of online shopping on his side.
Right. It is, to me, like, obviously they have the elements of like he's blessed by the goddesses, like the food from the Otherworld supermarket is like, it gives like giga stat buffs. He can just like order things from there and sell like super high quality goods that there's no way that like, anybody in like a medieval sort of technology level could produce. And then like that's all pretty classic stuff. Like, he gets like a merchant license and all that. But honestly, like, it's really not actually the forefront. It's like, obviously he's like OP in like these ways, but he's also just like OP because his companion is OP, and basically his companion just like wants to eat food. And
yeah, I like that he himself like feels like a weak person, like he feels like a weak character, and he's very like, put out of his element by how strong his companion is, and it's kind of like put upon him, right? He's not happy about it, right? He's not happy about the situation.
He doesn't want anything to do with it, which I think is really funny.
Yes.
So, for being a food anime, obviously the thing that you have to direct all of your attention towards is the cooking portion. And they did it so well. The animation, like, and attention to detail was great. There is, like, when he's cutting meat, there's, like, a real sort of, like, sense of weight to the meat. Like, it kind of flops over.
Yes.
It kind of, like, squishes down a little bit.
Yeah.
Everything, like, looks really good. And it would be very easy for a cooking isekai to just not look this good. Especially in the food department. Like, it could really just kind of look very average, but they really went the extra mile with it, and it really shows. Like, it's like, that's food that makes me hungry. I want to eat that.
I like that it's kind of like they focus on the campfire cooking part of it, because it looks like stuff that you could make, like, in your kitchen, or, like, if you have, like, a little outdoor setup that you could make over, like, a little, outdoor burner kind of thing. So it's, like, simple enough that, like, you probably could just pretty easily replicate the recipes, because they go through it step by step and they show you all the ingredients and everything. And yeah, it's satisfying to watch. You can learn a bit about food too, and you get to see these little slimes and the big wolf eat, and they look so happy about it. It's like, oh, it's not just like, people eating. I mean, he eats his own cooking and he's happy about it too, but it's not just about feeding people. It's this kind of gets, if you're more about making animals happy, then this one,
right? Yeah.
This one might be for you too. So I liked it. It was very cute, and it definitely has, like, a more necessary component of it being an isekai versus, like, him just being born in the world, because him having an online shopping ability is it's part of, like, the gag in a way too, which I like.
I also like that this is, like, an isekai where, like, the main character is just like, oh, I'm not a hero. I kind of just want to leave. Can I leave? And, like, that's it. Like, there's another story happening in the world that has nothing to do with him.
Yes.
Like, the adventurers, they're like, man, this food sucks. Hey, you think that guy's doing okay? I hope so.
He has adventuring companions who miss him and his cooking.
It's very charming, and it's very cute, and it's very cozy. It's pretty funny. And the food animation is great. It looks really tasty. I'm a big fan.
I like it too.
I would definitely watch another season. I think that the ending also was really, really cute. I really like the style of the ending.
Yeah, the ending animation was
had this
so
kind of
cute.
like children's picture book sort of thing to it.
Super cute style.
All right, why don't you tell me about the stuff that you watched that I didn't?
Yeah, we only got a couple. So there's Golden Kamuy 4th season. It's strange. It's only 6 episodes long, and apparently it's picking up about a week from when we're recording this. But it is interesting. They focus more on Ashira's like her role in terms of, like, leading her people, how her father raised her to be able to participate in guerrilla warfare to lead her people. And Sugimoto, of course, doesn't want that for her, but eventually he tells her this season what her father said to him, and what he wants for her, and how Sugimoto is totally against it. But, it's not his decision to make, and so she has to make that call in terms of whether she wants to lead her people or not, and what that means, and how that will probably mean that she'll have to do the war thing. So that's what the season is kind of like, the conflict is mostly based around, which I think is really, really interesting. If you've been keeping up with Golden Kamuy, then, this is another solid entry. I wouldn't say that it's completely deviating in any way or the other. So I'm looking forward to them releasing the other half of the season. I'm not sure why I haven't liked this. I'll have to look it up later. But yeah. And aside from that, here's my sports anime corner right here. I finished Blue Lock. It was quite good. I liked it. I want to watch more of it. It's just really solid in terms of animation, and the storytelling is decent. The characterization they do in like little omake kind of segments at the end of each episode, because they don't have time to actually characterize people during the episodes because there's so much soccer happening. So in that way, it kind of gets away with it, and manages to keep interesting. And Yowamushi Pedal Limit Break is the other sports anime that I watched from this season.
I cannot believe there is still more Yowamushi Pedal. I feel like every season we talk about Yowamushi Pedal.
Me neither. I'm also shocked that they released more. And the thing is that they're only in their second year of high school. Yeah, so the most of the series takes place during their first year. This is their second year, and they just wrapped it up. I feel like we've been doing the podcast for about 5.5 years now, and I feel like you've been watching Yowamushi Pedal the whole time. Every time they release more, I have to watch it because I'm really endeared to like the main character. I think he's so cute. He is like this your typical like otaku, like nerd or whatever. He spends most of his time in Akihabara, like going from shop to shop, buying goods and stuff that he likes. And he gets into cycling, and he's just a really wholesome character who happens to become an athlete, and it's so out of his element, but he keeps up with it anyway, and he ends up winning the big race for his team, and they become like the top high school in cycling, and they do it again in their second year too.
Of course.
And it's like, how do you do the same thing over again in the second year, but still keep it interesting? And then this time they just ended up exploring a lot more of the characters' backstories and stuff like that, like kind of like being like, oh, these two characters are related now because of this flashback that we're gonna show you right here. It's a lot of stuff like that. It was so funny. I didn't hate it, but I could see it. I saw you. It's just so blatant what they're doing. But yeah, I'm still watching it. If they make more, I'll still watch more of it.
I mean, yeah.
And that's it. That's my sports corner for the season.
Nice.
Yep.
I look forward to another 5 years of Yowamushi Pedal.
Oh, let's go.
All right. Well, cool. I believe that's it for the season. Next episode will be Chainsaw Man and / or a sampler episode. It'll come out. Episodes will be coming out.
Yes, those two will definitely be coming out for sure. We just the order may vary.
Yeah. So yeah, who are you and where can we find you on the internet?
Hola, I'm Swan, also known as Renu. You can find me on my socials on Twitter, Twitch, all that jazz at SwanDrawn. You can find me on Instagram at swan.drawn. I have been playing through Potionomics. I think I mentioned this before. I think past the halfway point, so we're probably gonna wrap up the game in the next couple weeks, and it's a lot of fun. Really, I'm still enjoying it. I'm actually enjoying it even like more now than before because there's more stuff to do. They somehow keep expanding the game in a really fun way. I can definitely see why it's been such like an indie hit, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really like that, and I'll also be attending a lot of conventions in May, so I guess keep an eye out for that.
Nice.
Maybe I will be in your area, plaguing you.
Listen, if you are in the area, I can house you, and we can hang out.
That's so sweet. I don't think I'll be close enough for that, though. California
Probably
is such a
not.
huge
California's really
state.
big, and the Bay Area is not the greatest for conventions. Most big conventions do not happen here. Like, the one that I can think of that usually happens is, I believe, Crunchyroll's convention they usually hold in, like, San Jose.
Oh, uh-huh.
But maybe this year they did it in LA or something, or San Diego. I don't remember. But anyway, yeah, so if you're in the area, obviously, you know, we'll hang out and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
California is unfortunately, I mean, you probably feel this as somebody who lives in Texas. Like, California is way too big.
Big make huge large.
It is like 3 states stacked together.
It is. It is almost the entirety of the coast, except for 2 other states.
It's really funny explaining California to people that don't live here and people that live in non-American countries, especially because it's like, well, you see, California is like, it's like 8 countries.
Yes.
If you went like from top to bottom. And like, even as a state, it's like unreasonably large, and like the Bay Area and the southern sort of like LA area are very far apart, and like you could make the trip, but it would be a lot of driving.
Too much.
Perhaps
Too much.
Perhaps a bit, but if you want to take a detour, I'll be up here.
I will apply for conventions in that area, and hopefully maybe one day.
Maybe one day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm glad you're enjoying Pushonomics. It was a fun game.
Yeah. What about you?
I think you can find me all the places at Literal Soup. If I'm on place, it's there. That is a strange it's a sort of a strange time because like Twitter still exists, kind of, but it's like
against all odds.
Somehow it's still getting worse. Like you thought you could reach the bottom of the barrel with Twitter, and somehow we've gone deeper.
Yes, we can always go deep.
What? Like what? Why? Anyway. All the places at Literal Soup. I think I'm gonna start streaming more often. I was gonna stream today, the day that we were recording, but I felt like absolute garbage.
You're still recovering from your trip.
Yep. So I will do that. I don't want to like stream too much more. Like just one more regular stream a week would really be good for me, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, obviously I need to work that out and all that. But yeah, stay tuned for that. Other than that, I'm mostly just working on personal stuff, so you probably won't see too much of me unless you want to bother me in the podcast Discord.
Bother.
Or just passively like see what I'm reading or watching.
Yeah, based on what you're posting in the Discord.
Right. Okay, cool. Well, our opening is by Scott T Network, and our ending is by Takamakata. And the patrons we are thanking this episode are Evan Williams, Magpie Mirror Test, Claire, Sean Dow, Cherubel, and Dylan Boats. Thank you so much for your support, as always.
Yay, thank you.
You keep those highs diving?
What?
Those nets flixing?
Why would you say it like that? I don't like either of those. Neither of those are particularly flattering.
I suppose not. Also, if you go to AbsoluteTerritoryCast.com, the website has gotten a little itty bitty facelift, so it's just a little bit. It's a little bit prettier to look at.
I was very excited about that. I was like, "Did you do that, or did they do that?"
No, I did that. I did that.
Aww.
I decided, I was like, yeah, the podcast website has been in sort of a really bare bones basic format for quite a long time, and now it should look a little bit better.
It does look better.
Yeah. a little bit less grating on the eyeballs. All right, well, thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting. We'll be back pretty soon, hopefully.
Yeah.
And we will see you next time.
See you next time.
さようなら。また明日ね。